Teil 3 der Serie, wie man als Redner oder eben auch entsprechend als Trainer oder Berater ein Geschäft nachhaltig aufbaut. Wir gehen direkt wieder ins Interview mit Chris Davidson. Für alle, die jetzt erst direkt quer eingestiegen sind, bitte erst Teil 1 und 2 hören, damit man entsprechend auch alles im Zusammenhang richtig mitbekommt. Wir haben noch 2 weitere Teile hier nach, also Teil 4 und Teil 5 werden direkt in den Tagen im Anschluss veröffentlicht. Wir wünschen viel Spaß beim Zuhören. Das Interview mit Chris Davidson wurde in englischer Sprache geführt. Welcome back. Part number 3, how to sustainably build a business in professional speaking. Hello and welcome back, Chris Davidson.
Thank you, Niels.
So now we talked about opacity in part 1. We talked about system engagement in part 2. And then you said the third stage is community engagement. Not only does that sound like a lot of work, it also sounds quite complicated because we all know these moments. You set up some social media piece and you think, I'm going to build my community, it's all going to be well. And then you realize that after 1 year, you have 110 people, basically family and friends, who just, out of politeness, click on like when you post something. So that is, of course, not what people want. What do you mean with community engagement?
Okay, well, it's a great question. And there is a blurring between system engagement and community engagement. There's not a hard, harsh line. It's pretty clear when you get out of opacity and into system engagement. That's a fairly clear step. But from system engagement to community engagement is kind of just a smoothing from one to the other, really. It's not a definitive and necessarily clearly defined step. But what do I mean by it? What I mean by it is that you have the systems in place, so tick that box. We don't need to look at them anymore. But you go beyond having the systems and you make a conscious decision to add enormous value to a specific community of people. Now, and I completely get your view of, a year later, you've got 110 people,
exactly.
Or, family and friends. I get that. Yeah. I get that. And we've kind of all been there to some degree or another. But the challenge that I would put down when one finds oneself in that position, the challenge I would put down is just to say, well, it only means one of two things. Number one, you're not focusing on your community enough. Number two, your content isn't good enough. It's just one of those two. You can pick whichever one you like, but it isn't anything else. Don't try and convince me there's a third reason, because there isn't.
So how do I find out so first, of course, how do I find out which one is it? And especially when it's about my content isn't good enough, that is, of course, something which for most people is, well, hard to agree on, but also hard to find out.
Do you know, I'm not sure that it is. Because I think that the more you ask, the more you get, the more you'll be told. So if I look at people who, for me, have great community engagement, and I realize that not all of your listeners, by any stretch of the imagination, will know the person I'm about to quote, but she can be relatively readily found on Facebook, is a lady called Jane Ardern. She's a member of the Professional Speaking Association in the United Kingdom, and she's a dog trainer. She's a dog trainer and a dog breeder.
One of the many.
Yeah.
Let's face it, that is a very competitive market. When you offer dog training, there are basically hundreds in every city, aren't there?
There are. Now, Jane, there aren't, though, hundreds who have won the honors that Jane has won in major dog events like Crufts and what have you. There aren't those that have the qualifications that she has, a degree in canine behavior, etc. So, and there aren't those that have written the books that she has written, etc. So she has, by virtue of the quality of her work and just sticking at the quality of her work, she has built up an enormous following on Facebook. And all Jane has to do, frankly, I mean, she spends Facebook must be really upset with her, because I don't think she spends any money on advertising.
I think that's the point where most people will say, I want to do the same. I want to have engagement and don't have to put money down.
she throws a post up. She throws a post up into her Facebook page, and I'm just looking at one here. It's got nearly 800 engagements and reached over 7,000 people. She's not spent a penny on it.
That's what most people want.
Now Jane does that because she does it through the following. She engages as a human being. This for me is the big difference if we go back to system engagement. When I was talking about system engagement and in the previous program, you recall I was saying that really visitors to the site didn't know who I was. They came along, oh yes, shall I do business with Chris or not? Don't know who he is. And so community engagement, though, is that when people get to know you as a human being, and Jane does an excellent job of demonstrating to her community that she is a real human being. So she puts up videos of her dogs misbehaving and not doing the right things when she's making videos of them and all the rest of it. Mm-hmm. She talks about when things go wrong and all of this stuff, because we all know that's what happens. Mm-hmm. So although she is extraordinarily good and at the top of her particular tree, and lots of dog owners will be going, oh my goodness gracious, I wish my dogs were as obedient as Jane's and what have you. They get to know her as a human being. And that for community engagement, that is absolutely crucially important. So that's one particular aspect of community engagement that I think is important. Now, coming back to the materials. So ask and you shall receive. So I think if you keep asking on through social media, you can also run a number of surveys, formally and informally. We'll maybe say a couple of points on that in just a moment. But keep testing the market and keep responding to what people want, and then put up information on the website that just gives people the opportunity to sample information. So when I did this on the Active Presence website, I developed two sorts of download materials. I developed expert guides and I developed smart sheets. Mm-hmm. And a smart sheet was one piece of paper. It was a two-sided PDF, and a smart sheet could be downloaded by anybody without any sign up. And I had a library of them, and they were all nicely drawn up and nicely designed, and you could just go in and take as many as you liked. I didn't mind. The expert guides were 10, 12 pages, and they were behind a sign-up wall. So people would look at these smart sheets and say, well, actually, this is quite useful. If this is quite useful, then the chances are his expert guides are okay. I'll sign up. I'll give them an email address for an expert guide. One other point, the smart sheets, because the smart sheets were not hidden behind a sign-up wall, because they were in the general part of the website, of course, they're indexed by Google.
Yes.
So you've got a lot of words there, a lot of tightly written, good copy that, of course, is great for building the authority of the site. That gets you higher up the rankings, that brings more visitors, etc., etc., etc. And so it carries on. But community engagement is all about asking. And so probably just a final point to finish off in terms of asking. Don't forget that with SurveyMonkey, you can go and survey your marketplace. You can buy an audience from SurveyMonkey. So
that means I can say I want to have 100 decision makers from the United States in the age between 45 and 55, male, female, 50% split.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sounds expensive.
You can. I would suggest that you probably want a bigger sample size than that. 100 isn't much. Of course. So but in principle, in terms of what you've just said as an example, yes, you absolutely can. And then you can put your survey up.
That's of course
not particularly so. No, I did it. I did it when I was looking for I did it on a book I wrote a few years ago when I wanted to test the cover of the book and the title of the book. And so I asked, I specified the target market to SurveyMonkey. I loaded up different covers. I loaded up different titles. And I asked my target audience, what should I call this book and what cover should it have? And then I just did exactly what they told me to do.
And that, of course, is a better way than, I mean, we all know from our industry that normally people do market research by posting into their own Facebook group, which cover do you prefer, which, of course, has nothing to do with proper research.
It's not research at all. What it's actually doing is just saying, look at me, aren't I clever? I've written another book. Well, gee whiz, wow.
Correct. Yeah, that's the way how to put it. I am German. I like that straightforward way. Exactly. Excellent.
So I think that's really, I think that wraps up community engagement. Really, it's just, get the systems in place. Having got the systems in place, you don't need to pay attention to them anymore because they're working. So now, having got the systems in place, you can go to your community and let them see who you are as a human being, and just start engaging with them. And you are right. It's hard work. It's difficult and all the rest of it. And the critical point is to get to the point where people will comment on your posts and share your posts. That's the critical aspect of it.
Excellent. So that's community engagement for today. I'm going to put Chris' contact data into the show notes of this podcast if you have any additional aspects you like to talk about with Chris. And then we're going to see each other soon again for part 4, where we're going to talk about market alignment. So Chris, for today, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.